All right. Hi, friends. I'm Kim Adamski, HIV prevention specialist at the Hartford Gay and Lesbian Health Collective. We're located in Hartford at 1841 Broad Street. It's right near Trinity College and near the intersection with New Britain Avenue. We provide sexual health services like STI testing. We do PAPs, we do breast exams. We treat treatable STIs. We refer. We also have educational programming like this one today. We have social media, which we do post a lot of educational content on as well. And we have an empowerment group, which is a social and educational group for gay and bi guys ages 18 to 35. And last, we have our dental program. And I see our dentist, he's great, so I can vouch for it. And all our providers are great. So anyway, today we have Sarah Gilbert live with us to talk more about, or to talk to us about being a better ally to our trans friends and family. So Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be in this field?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Well, I just want to, first of all, just say thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited about this conversation and to partnership with such a great organization. So thanks so much for having me. And this is a really important discussion. So I'm excited for everybody who's here and everybody who will see this in the future. So I actually started learning much more in depth about gender diversity in grad school, actually. The very end of my time at the UConn School of Social Work, I had to do a group project with a couple of friends, and the general topic was cultural competency. And a friend of mine in the group said, why don't we put a different spin on this and talk about this in terms of gender diversity and learning about and sharing with our classmates about gender diversity. So that's when I first started learning about it and started talking to some people in the community as part of that project, and realized that this is something that was really fascinating to me. And also, talking to one person in particular and hearing her tell me about, as a trans person, how hard it was for her to find a therapist, to find someone who had any knowledge or experience in this. It really hit home with me that this is something that not everybody easily has access to, in terms of people in the community not having access to care. So after graduate school, it was just kind of my own personal interest to kind of continue to go to trainings, read books, and study on it to continue learning and be able to help clients as well. I think that commitment to ongoing learning is important, and I especially want to point that out because I am, as we'll define, I'm sure, as part of this discussion, I am a cisgender person. So what that means is that my sex assigned at birth lines up with my gender identity. So I think it's especially important for me as someone who's not of that community to kind of recognize my privilege in that, and to commit to ongoing learning, especially from people in the community, and keep up to date on information and resources for people to do my work well. So that was my long-winded answer there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree about the ongoing education too, because I mean, even folks who are super, super supportive of their trans friends and family can definitely continue to get better. We can always get better. So, and that's why, like you said, it's important to keep being educated, and why I'm so glad that there's so many people here today looking to support their trans friends and family. We love to see it.
Absolutely.
So let's some basic stuff. What does it mean for someone to be trans?
Awesome, great question. So that's a very broad term. Essentially, what that means is that someone's sex assigned at birth, a label that is given to someone, typically male or female, does not align with one's inner sense of knowing of themselves, their inner sense of understanding, which is what we refer to as someone's gender. So broadly, that's what that means. Whereas, like I said, for me, myself being cisgender, my sex assigned at birth is female and my gender is feminine. So that's the main difference there between cisgender and transgender, or trans for short. Most often I hear people say trans in communication, trans or cis, shorten those two terms.
Okay, and so actually we have a question in our Slido page that relates to that. Is non-binary the same thing as transgender?
Yeah, so for some people that I have worked with, they identify as both trans and non-binary. When more often I will say people that I get to work with will define non-binary as a gender identity that is not exclusively male or female. So not fitting into either of those neat two categories as we tend to be socialized to think of exclusively male or exclusively female. So I've worked with some clients who identify both as trans and non-binary. I've also known people who identify as non-binary as a separate entity of that. I'm non-binary and not also identifying as trans. So in terms of that, that brings up a really good point that when someone is telling us aspects of their identity, we want to be really mindful that someone's identity and how they define it and what those certain labels mean for them can be very individual to the person. We should not be making any sort of broad assumptions of, oh, I heard that term once, so I know what it means for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's gender identity is very, very, very individualized. I mean, even like any given label is not specific enough probably to describe any specific person's gender identity, but it certainly helps describe how you feel to other people, I think.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some questions you most frequently get from family and friends of trans folks, particularly when they just come out, but even just in general?
Yeah, so questions and concerns I so often hear come up. I'll start with a concern first is, or a statement of, I just don't understand. I don't understand what this means. And obviously when we hear that statement, there could be any number of implications with that. I think by and large, what I see is it can either be kind of a negative connotation of I don't understand it, therefore I don't accept it. But what I also see happen quite often is I don't understand it, and so therefore I feel like I'm not being a good ally or can't be a good ally. I hear a lot of people ask questions about how to become an expert in this, how to learn as much as quickly as possible, because I think that there is a pervasive perception out there for allies that people need to be experts on gender identity and understand everything there is in order to actually be an ally. So what I remind folks is that it's an ongoing process, that being open to learning is really the most important fundamental part of active allyship. You don't have to fully understand. You don't have to be an expert to be respectful, right? I really remind people of that a lot too, that nobody is expecting you to be the penultimate expert on all things gender. Respect is really by and large what everybody I think is looking for. I don't think that that's unique to the trans or non-binary community. So I remind people I'm a big fan of the TV show Ted Lasso. I don't know if anybody else here is, but I remind people a lot of this phrase from that show of be curious, not judgmental. So
I like that.
Kind of, yeah, see, pop culture comes in handy.
Yeah, so, I actually used to say when I used to teach about sexuality in prison, and a lot of I was not that there's anything wrong with being in prison, but I was not the one in prison. I was a teacher, and I taught sexuality to a lot of male inmates in New York State, and a lot of them wouldn't understand particularly the phrase MSM, but also they wouldn't always understand trans-related concepts and stuff. And what I told them was, you don't have to understand it, but you have to be respectful. And they were all able to grasp that.
Yeah, it's such a basic concept, isn't it? Right? That there's no pressure to know everything yesterday. But I hear that a lot, and I hear questions of, what does this mean? You know, in terms of other common questions I hear is, well, what do I do now? What do I do with this information? And I say, well, the answer is it depends, right? First and foremost, really touch base with that person who came out to you as far as what do they want or need from you? And I think I can't ever emphasize enough the importance of valuing and really honoring somebody's privacy in this process, right? Being careful to not unintentionally out them, checking in with them about who they're out to or who else might have this information so that they are not causing any potential problems in that person's lives. You know, and I think I'm going on a tangent here, but I'll say, I guess not so much a question, but an advice piece that I give people a lot is really treat this information about this person in your life with respect. Like, they trusted you enough to share a very vulnerable piece of their experience and their identity. So really treat that with the care that it deserves. And your actions, if they're guided by that, I think that's kind of like a good focal point of, how do I show the utmost care and respect for this information that this person trusted me with? I'm
on mute, my bad. So I actually, the The question that I hear a lot is about pronouns. And
Yeah.
one of the more negative phrasings of it is like, oh, I'm never going to get it. To which I'm usually like, okay, well then I'm never going to stop correcting you. So one of the questions actually in the Slido, we have a second one, is what's a good way to remember your friend's new pronouns? Because that can be difficult at first, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I try to do and encourage people to do is mental rehearsing. If you're not seeing this person, if you are not doing like a video call where you're seeing their pronouns next to their name, doing a mental rehearsing of like, hey, that's so-and-so, that's this person in my life. This is their name, if that's also part of it, like this is their name and these are their pronouns, right? Trying to make that connection as you're visualizing that person or as you're looking at a picture of them, to help kind of make that mental connection. I know it might sound a little bit weird, but that's something that can be a really helpful thing for people, especially in between conversations, right? To help you make that connection of, okay, I'm looking at the visual of this person, these are their pronouns. Also, I think it's important to acknowledge I don't know if this is a question, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but also acknowledging what to do if you do make a mistake. I think.
So what do you do?
Yeah. So by and large, I think the worst thing to do is act like it didn't happen, right? Mm-hmm. Not acknowledge that you did it, pretend it didn't happen, assume the other person's not going to care. I think that's the most damaging approach to take. So what I would say is if you catch it yourself, acknowledge it right away. As soon as you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I just realized I use the wrong pronouns. I'm sorry. And if you don't catch it, but the person you're talking to brings it to your attention of actually my pronouns are they, them. Thank you so much for correcting me. I'm so sorry. Mm-hmm. And invite that person to talk about it or comment on it if they want to. Acknowledge that you recognize there was a mistake and then continue the conversation. Mm-hmm. What I hear most often from people that I get to work with in my practice is experiences where somebody, I think out of the best of intentions, somebody overcorrects and they over apologize and profusely go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. The worst person in the world. I'm dreadful. Like really overdoing it. And then what that means is that the person who you're apologizing to, you're putting emotional labor on them to make you feel better. Yeah. And by and large, people I talk to are like, that's actually worse.
It's uncomfortable.
So super uncomfortable. And especially if somebody's already experiencing social anxiety or self-consciousness, if they're just trying to have a conversation with you about like making plans for the weekend, they might not have the energy or the desire to engage in this like emotional caretaking. Mm-hmm. So that's where I say kind of finding this balance of apologize, admit what happened, or really acknowledge if someone brings it to your attention, and then ask them like, hey, I feel bad about that. Do you want to talk about it? Mm-hmm. And if they say no, continue the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. That is helpful information. So now say that your friend or family member comes out as trans. You may or may not have suspected, I don't know, but how would you recommend responding to them coming out in a supportive way, but not like akin to the overly apologizing emotional labor way?
Yeah. So I would say really recognizing, again, keeping in mind that this person has trusted you with something very, very often delicate, fragile, a really vulnerable piece of information. So I would start out with saying, thank you so much for telling me. Thank you so much for trusting me to share this with me. What do you need from me? What would you like from me? How can I support you? I think that's the best way to handle that. And to let the person know, hey, if you're not even clear on what that is right now, that's okay. Come back to me. Obviously, this is an open conversation. The other thing I would say to that extent is this is not like a 2-minute one-time conversation. This is an ongoing conversation that's important to honor kind of how this may evolve over time, right? So letting someone know, I'm here for you. How would you like me to support you? Because what we want to keep in mind is that support looks different to everyone. Someone might say, the way that I can feel loved and supported right now is to have the space to continue to process this and figure things out on my own. And I will come to you if I have something to share with you, if I have something new that I need from you or that I would like from you. And other people might say, I'd love to just really talk about this like right now. So kind of being open to whatever that person needs. And whatever your struggles may be, if you have struggles with this news, don't put it on that person, right? Find another source of support, information, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a support group, websites to inform yourself, books to read, videos to watch. I can't stress that enough too, that if you are struggling with it, what's really important is to not put that on the person who's just come out to you.
Now, do you have any recommendations for books or media or whatever to start with?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first and foremost, seek out media that is put out by people in the community, right? People who are speaking from their own lived experience. I can't highlight the importance of that enough. There are a number of creators out there, people who are in the community who are creating content on social media that share quite a bit about it. Alok Vaid-Menon was someone who comes to mind, Jeffrey Marsh, people who are visibly out in the community and sharing their examples. And as far as this is where I think the internet can be good and bad. Obviously, we know the internet has a lot of misinformation, a lot of hate speech out there, but it also can be a wonderful source of information for people as well, too. If you're going to a site like Gender Spectrum, for example, genderspectrum.org can be tremendously helpful for parents and caregivers, school support staff, professional staff. Going on their website, there's drop-down menus, so you can kind of select I am a, and then select who you are, what you're looking for, and it'll connect you to a whole host of resources to provide information, link you to online support groups, things like that. So, thankfully, as the years go by, we're seeing more and more access to information about gender diversity, and especially from people in the community sharing their own experiences and stories. So, yeah.
I'm going to drop the Gender Spectrum website in the chat for people. Check that out. Okay, so back to our situation where our friend or family comes out as trans. Say that you're really surprised, right? And you don't react the best way that you could have, like you weren't expecting it, you didn't mean to, but you were like, what the hell? Obviously that's not the reaction we want, but sometimes we make mistakes. How would you recommend going about correcting that and becoming supportive?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, recognizing that you made a mistake is huge, right? That humility is something that I think a lot of us are not super comfortable with, of acknowledging we've harmed someone or didn't react the way that we really should have or could have in that moment. So I would really highly recommend that people do their own kind of inner reflecting and work on that first, whether that's through their own kind of work with a therapist or a trusted person in their life, kind of processing that, thinking through, oh my gosh, this is why I said that, or here's what I wish I could have said. Do that work separate of the person that you have harmed before you come back to that person to make that repair. I think that that's really key, because I think, again, out of probably really good intentions, sometimes people feel guilt and shame about not reacting, and then they want to go right back to the person in the trans community who they didn't respond well to, and then it gets messy, and then that person is hurting and they need their own space and time to heal. And so there can be this conversation that's put upon them without even checking in with them about, hey, are you ready to have this conversation again? Like I have seen so many people, again, I think out of really great intentions, want to try to rush the apology and do that relational repair before they really check in on fully exploring where that came from and checking in with the trans person about, do you need some more time and space to process this? So I would also recommend, that as step number 2 of, work out your stuff on your own, help resolve that, reflect on it, and then check in with a person and say, hey, I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I said or how I reacted. I just wanted to let you know that if and when you are ready, I'd love to address that with you. So that opens up space for that person to take whatever time they need and to let you know, hey, I hear you, I'm not ready yet, or hey, the damage is so done that I'm never ready to have this conversation. I'm really giving them that space and respect to not just take on the processing that you need to do. I think that that's something that sometimes people don't think about as well. So yeah, taking the time to work on that on yourself, and then checking in with a person to let them know when or if you're ready. I'd love to talk about it. I've been doing some thinking. I owe you an apology.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Now, I'm sure, we all know that some folks do unfortunately have unsupportive friends or family. And Sarah, you work with these folks sometimes. What are
Yeah.
some ways that you try to help address that with them?
Yeah, I will say I love my job so much, but this is the hardest part of the work that I get to do every day. I really try to give space to hearing what's underneath that. If there are unexplored fears that a family member might have, if there are unexplored biases or prejudices about gender, gender diverse people in any way, and I try to dig through that a little bit and hold space for what might be a reaction rooted in kind of like a secondary emotion, right? If we can get there, that's great. That's where some real healing can be done. I also speak to people about their relationship with that person. Like, wow, I hear you're really struggling to accept your trans or non-binary kid. I hear that you have really strong feelings about that. I wonder if you've noticed kind of how your relationship with that child has been since you shared that viewpoint, and see if they can talk about that. And if there is insight into the fact that that has changed, which I imagine it probably has, right, for the worse, say, not in a judgmental way, but just say, like, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the fact that your kid doesn't want to talk to you right now or isn't answering your emails or phone calls? Trying to appeal to the relationship, because 9 times out of 10 family members I have met anyway, they do ultimately want to have a good quality relationship with their child or with whatever family member has come out as trans. So trying to make that connection to their reaction and how it has affected the relationship and help them explore that and see if there's room for improvement and reflection. Yeah.
So we got two kind of related questions. So first, how do you talk to people who believe that their spirituality forbids them to accept or support their trans and non-binary friends and family? Followed by, how do you work with certain religious people who are very into traditional gender norms?
Yeah, wow, those are great questions. So the spirituality aspect of it, if people are open to it, I try to appeal to kind of core principles of that spiritual or religious faith. I definitely don't make any claims that I am an expert on all world religions and spiritual faiths. So I do try to inquire, again, being curious and not judgmental about, tell me about what your faith means to you, tell me about the core values and tenets and principles, and see if there is an alignment between the rejection of the trans person. Usually those two things kind of clash, right? If there's certain values and principles that clash with accepting someone who's trans, then that's something for curiosity and reflection. If people are open to it, I could recommend some resources that kind of address the intersection of faith and gender diversity, if they're open to either websites or books on the subject. It really obviously depends on the person and how open they are to talking about it. It may also be certainly applicable to encourage that person to talk to a member of their own faith community for counsel, to talk about this from someone within their community to get some further insight into how these things all kind of intersect. And it's definitely important to be open to this discussion. I think really it's understandably a significant concern for some people that that causes a lot of tension. So yeah, well, great questions.
Yeah, thank you for those. If anybody else has questions, definitely drop them in the chat. All right, so do you have any other resources that you recommend for families and friends of trans folks, and including your support group? Tell us about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically for like families and friends, I always recommend PFLAG, especially, people are from all over. There's chapters everywhere, which is great. I recommend
there's one in Waterbury,
definitely.
definitely.
Yeah, and so I recommend people checking that out online, especially. I've had some people kind of react actually being a little more open to checking out a support group with it being online versus in person. I've had some people be very reluctant to it in person for a number of reasons. So I guess that's one of the weird benefits of this whole COVID experience of things going virtual, has allowed some people to feel a little more comfortable checking out like PFLAG. New Haven Pride Center also offers a lot of great support groups as well. And then as far as there's another group practice out there in Monroe called Growth Therapy that offers a great support group for parents and caregivers of gender diverse youth twice a month, totally free. So I let people know about that. My support group specifically is for spouses and partners. So it's addressing that particular relationship dynamic. I facilitate a free monthly virtual group every month. It's the first Thursday of every month from 7 to 8:30. If anybody is interested, I'll put my email in the chat here. Lindsay shared the PFLAG website. Fantastic. Thanks so much for that. I'm going to put my email here in the chat if anybody wants to reach out regarding the support group that I facilitate for spouses and partners.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Do you have a link for like information about your support group, or is it email only?
I can link to my website.
Oh, cool. Let's do it. Okay. And oh, is there anything out there for transgender elders? So there is a group that this one's not specifically for trans elders, but there is a LGBTQ senior center program. You can find it on meetup.com and it's virtual right now. I've attended, it's really cool. There's all kinds of people on it. So that's the one I would recommend. What thoughts do you have, Sarah?
You took my answer.
They're so nice.
I have not personally attended, but I've heard great things. So that was actually what I was going to say as well.
Well, there you go. So that's the main one I recommend. Unfortunately, I really feel like there's not enough out there in general for older LGBTQ folks, which is a huge bummer, but there is that at least.
Yeah.
All right. Do you know of groups and organizations for Spanish-speaking people who are LGBTQ? The Health Collective does have Spanish-speaking staff, just so you know. So that would be for healthcare-related services primarily. Do you have any thoughts, Sarah?
I don't, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I'm not Spanish-speaking myself, so I'm sure that's part of it. That's a really fantastic question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Sorry.
Yeah, that's another one that's probably kind of underserved. But we do have Spanish-speaking staff at our facility, at least. Any other questions out there? I am going to drop my email in the chat, and Sarah dropped hers in as well. Is it okay if people contact you, Sarah, with
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So I'll do that. And
yeah, any sort of follow-up questions, any supports or connections I can help make for you, I'm happy to do that.
And mine is kim@hglhc.org. Oh, it looks like Lindsay. Oh, Lindsay dropped PFLAG information on Latino groups. Sorry, I'm clicking and reading at the same time. All right, PFLAG connects communities, Latino communities / Comunidad Latina. Beautiful. That's really helpful.
Awesome.
All right, another question. One more. This will be our last question to answer. How can I help support my spouse with their family who are not supportive?
Yeah, great question. So Allison, I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing or not, but I guess part of how I want to help you with this is answering. So your spouse, is your spouse somebody in the community and their family is not supportive of that? Is that the particular question that you have?
Okay. So yeah. Spouse is trans, assigned male at birth for anyone who's not reading the chat.
Yes, awesome, great. Thanks for clarifying. I wasn't sure if that would be comfortable to share. So it is so hard, right? Because of course your spouse, you care about them. Probably your spouse is like the most important or one of the most important people in the world for you. So I would try to see if there is any way to build upon your spouse's supports, other people who are supportive to your spouse. Chosen family is a really powerful thing. It can be a really tricky thing because people may not be supportive because they have just never interacted with a trans person before and they don't know anything about it and they're just kind of in a state of shock or confusion. Some people can be really rooted in those beliefs of just not being open and accepting whatsoever. So obviously I don't know where your spouse's family is in that spectrum, but I would say if there's any opportunity, if there's any opening for them to at least be open to hearing the experiences of other family members of people who are trans. I would start there to see if they're even open to, I don't know, watching videos online or something that is not involving a personal connection or meeting them to share something. I would recommend that. Sometimes that's a safe entry point to hearing about other people's stories without having to share their own. It may be helpful for them to go to a PFLAG meeting also, to connect with other family members and learn how they've been experiencing this and how they've reacted, or what thoughts or feelings or challenges they've had, and also what joys they've had in this experience. Family dynamics can be so tricky, right? It can be so challenging in trying to figure out what actually people are open to hearing and learning. And then also I would recommend for your spouse, I think an important thing that we haven't talked yet about is boundaries. Having your spouse have the support from you and whoever else is in that support network of establishing, what are my personal boundaries as far as how much effort do I want to put into this person really understanding my experience and learning about this and respecting me. I think setting that boundary as far as how much effort we're able to put in is a very important source of support that we might not always think about. So helping your spouse figure out, what do my relationships look like if my family continues to not respect me? If it's not a matter of, oh my gosh, they just didn't know and they need time, making boundaries for what does communication look like with these people? How much access do they get to me in my personal life? And that can be obviously an ongoing process that's challenging, but I think for a lot of people that I have known over the years, that's been a really powerful step in dealing with people who are not open and accepting.
All right, thank you. So I do have a demographics form that it would be so helpful if attendees could fill out. It helps us get our funding. It is confidential, but the information helps us get our funding so that we can provide more programming like this. So if it'll take like literally 2 minutes. So please, please, please. And anyway, again, I'm Kim Adamski, HIV prevention specialist at the Hartford Gay and Lesbian Health Collective. You can call us at 860-278-4163, or you can email me at kim.a@hglhc.org. Thank you so much again, Sarah, for coming and chatting with us. This was really cool and interesting. So
you're welcome. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for everybody who is here, and thanks for all the great questions and comments and sharing resources. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. All right. Bye.
Bye.